Today I've got a bit of a plan to try and recommission this old generator here that's been in storage for actually a number of years. It's very wet and dirty, as you can see, and there is something wrong with it. It's actually one from work, and it's been out of service for a long time. Came from an auction house, some kind of liquidated stock at one point, about 5-6 years ago. I think we used it for a little while, and then from memory the pull start broke on it, but it never really ran that well anyway. So it just kind of got slung into the back of a shed, and it's been there ever since. But I'm hoping to recommission it and put it back into service today. I've got it set up on the kitchen table here rather than outside, just because of the foul weather outside. And I bought a service kit. I'm going to show you that in a second and see what we can do with this generator. Now, this generator's been put together by a company called Haverhill, who are quite a reputable generator manufacturer. They produce the alternator and switch gear and the frame, and the engine itself's a Honda. It's a Honda GX140, which isn't an engine I've really dismantled before, but it's very similar to the more popular models. To my knowledge, it's never had an oil change. It's got the original plug-in, the original filter, the oil in it. I'm sure is just disgusting. We'll go through all those things. Okay, I'm just having a go with this pull start, and it's obvious there is something quite wrong with it. It's not returning properly. It's not engaging either. Pulling it doesn't actually spin the engine. Nothing else obviously wrong with it from the outside. So let's start by having a look at the oil. Now, on these engines there is a filler cap either side, and quite often they can be quite hard to open if they haven't been open for a long time, but just crack it with a pair of grips. Just want to see how bad it is. The oil actually does look fairly clear. Oops, but it's rolling a little bit of tissue into the aperture. I can see an idea of the condition of it. Oh yeah, it's quite black. Yeah, it's pretty dirty. It's not good for the engine to let the oil either get too low or too dirty. Invariably the oil does get very dirty as it runs. These little engines don't have an inbuilt oil filter, so it does need changing quite regularly if you want to actually look after the engine. Now, these engines do have an oil drain plug here, right down here on the base of the engine. By unscrewing that, oil will drain out, but the problem with using that on this setup is the oil will basically go everywhere, because there's no way really of getting a container to catch that. It will just go all over the table. So I'm going to have to resort to a bit more creativity on this one. What I have got that will hopefully do a good job of this is this fuel transfer pump. It's a manual pump. You just squeeze it and it transfers, well, any fluid really from one end of the hose to the other, and hopefully I can use that to pump the oil out. If the oil's too thick, it might be a bit difficult to do, but I'm going to give it a go. I'll just stick it straight in there to the bottom. I'm going to pump it into this jar. It probably holds more than this jar's worth. Let's give it a go. Oh, here it is. And it's quite thick, but it's coming out. Yeah, it's pretty gunky. Ew, that oil's gross. I've just tipped some fresh oil into this other little tray here, just so you can see what the difference is. If you're working on an engine like this and the oil looks like that, it's got to go. That's really burnt, it's full of contaminants, it's really not doing the engine any good at all. This stuff's fresh out the bottle. You can see it's much clearer. You can see through it to a degree. It's not had the same treatment that has, and this is ready to go in the engine now. Basically with these engines, you fill it up until the level is almost spilling over. So when the engine's level, which it is, when the oil is up to basically as high as it can get before it starts pouring out of there, that's about right. It'll take a lot more than came out of it, largely because it hadn't got enough oil in it. The engine does have a low oil cutoff, or it should do. Most of these kinds of engines do, so if the oil gets really low it'll turn off, but they don't always work. I've seen these engines literally just completely run dry of oil, and the oil cutoff never actually kicked in at all, so it wouldn't depend on that. It's much better to be able to continuously check it if you can. Alright, that's right up to the level. I can put the rest of this oil back in the bottle. for next time. Let me show you the service kit that's arrived from eBay. By putting in GX140 service kit in, loads of different stuff comes up, and if you're working on an engine that's similar to this, yeah, you're going to find the same sort of stuff. It's basically everything in it you might want to change to get an old worn out engine working well. Well, nothing major, it doesn't incorporate things like piston rings or head gaskets, but there's the usual air filter. Not looked at the old one, but I bet it's disgusting. Gives you an ignition coil. This is the thing that generates the high voltage spike to the spark plug. And they're very simple. Basically a magnet on the flywheel just spins past these two magnetic receivers here and generates a high voltage spike over the coil that's inside here at just the right moment, which runs down and fires the spark plug. These things, they tend to either work or they don't. If this thing produces no spark, I'll assume that it needs a new one. But actually, if there's a good spark, then I don't really need to change that. They also give you a spark plug. You'd expect that. Just a generic little spark plug there that is for this engine. It's all good. They give you a whole brand new carburetor. Obviously these are all aftermarket parts, these aren't genuine Honda parts. Okay, so maybe consider changing that. I'll have a look at the existing one when I get the air filter off, but I can change the carburetor there, that's good. They give you another on-off switch in case there's anything wrong with the existing one. I haven't tested it, so I don't know. And some gaskets if you do change the carburetor. Some new gaskets for it to stop the air leaking, that's good. And a new pull start mechanism. These never seem to last forever. It doesn't look quite the same as the one on here, but I think it's the same bolt pattern, so I don't think it'll be a problem. I'm going to try it anyway. So yeah, it's a pretty cheap kit. You know, this whole kit, everything in it costs about £20 delivered, which is a lot cheaper than buying a new generator if that's what it comes to. So there's three bolts. I think they're a 10mm metric head on each one holding this on. So we'll just whiz that off and replace it. Hopefully it'll fit. Not a good start, the mechanism's different. It does not fit. Let's have a look how they differ. They do look very different. And when you compare the two, the bolt patterns are the same. So this one will physically bolt to the engine, but actually the dog clutches, the centrifugal, when you pull the handle, the teeth fly out and grip the side of the flywheel here. They're different. It's a service kit for this engine, GX140. Maybe it's a newer version of this engine, but the bolt pattern's the same, but the teeth aren't. So I'm going to have to use the old pull start, but you know, that's okay. Actually, now I've taken it off, it doesn't seem so bad. I can tighten up the bolts on it, give it some fresh oil, clean it up, degrease it a bit, and actually it does seem to be, it's not beyond help. It is working, and then maybe it just kind of got itself a bit stuck. Maybe some fresh oil on it will cheer it up a little bit and put that into use. I'll give that a bit of a clean up. Put some fresh oil on the spindle and some of the other parts. I'm hoping the oil runs down into the spring mechanism. I don't really want to have to open that part. If you take the bolt off the end of the spindle there, the axle, and you take this mechanism off, the spring all unwinds, and they're an absolute pain to get back in. I really don't have to do that unless the spring had come off, which it hasn't. It's actually returning quite nicely now. I think maybe I was a little bit quick to think it needed a new new pull start mechanism. It actually seems to be okay now. I've cleaned it up a little bit, so I'm just going to put it straight back on, and hopefully it'll still last a while. I'll still look out for another one on the internet, on the assumption that this won't last forever, but for the moment I think it's okay. Well, next job, let's have a look at this carburetor and the air filter on top, and see what needs changing there. This original air filter, actually, it's not too bad. It's a paper one. The aftermarket one, wherever it is, there it is a foam one. Oh, it's got paper in as well. That's fine. Yeah, it looks like it'll fit. Let's give it a go. Yeah, it seems to. Alright, well, at least the air filter's okay. It's pretty dirty under this air filter. This is the throttle control here. There's a lot of fungus growing even on the rubber parts, and it's all looking a little bit tired. The springs are not quite so fresh anymore. I'm just going to whiz off the top of this carburetor cover, see what it's like underneath. This whole thing should just come off now. It's a little difficult to do and hold the camera at the same time. Oh, there we go. And there's the very manky looking carburetor in there, or carburetor. This is like well, it's a manifold really. It takes the air in and feeds it round into the carb there. Well, we'll call it an air intake manifold. Made a bit of a schoolboy error here. I took the carb off without really thinking, of course, there'd be just a little bit of fuel still in it. It's old stale petrol or gasoline. Should have emptied the tank first really. So there's a little bit soaked into the carb now, only a little bit. Just empty the rest of it out into a jar and have a bit of a clean up. Take my jumper off, I'm getting a little bit warm here. Must be all this petrol about. Now I've just been looking at the new carburetor here and the old one. And actually, although the old carburetor is pretty filthy on the outside, it actually looks clean as a whistle inside. Even the jet looks really good. To be honest, I'm tempted to keep the old carburetor on it. I can certainly change it. At this stage it doesn't make much difference. I wasn't able to film opening this because I really did need two hands, but the float chamber there that is underneath just fills up with petrol, and the level is controlled by the little sort of the float there. This was absolutely full of sediment. Loads of gunk came out of this, so it was obviously in need of emptying. Now the gunk's gone, it actually looks quite fresh inside. You know, I think that's okay. Just giving this a clean up here. Actually, I've got to say, one thing I like about this engine so far is literally every bolt I've had to undo has been an M10, or sorry, 10mm head, I should say, which has been very convenient for, you know, not to continuously change spanners. I've also noticed that there's no gaskets on this carburetor where it joins the engine or the air filter on either end. There's no kind of gasket. Well, there clearly should be one. I think at some point in this machine's life, someone's had this carburetor off and has not replaced the gaskets when they put it back on. You know, it will run without the gaskets, but it's not ideal. It'll leak air and fuel mixture. It's, you know, you should have the gaskets on. It'll run better with them. So yeah, as I got some, I'll certainly put them on. I'm going to take the old spark plug out now. Now you can take it out easily with the carburetor in, but it's actually more space around the spark plug to take it out while it's not there. Yep, here it comes. Yeah, it's pretty dirty. Yeah, it's very soiled, very blackened and sooty. The gap looks a little bit big, but what we're going to do anyway is just change this out for the one that came in the kit, and you know, why not. One thing I'm going to do before I put the new plug into the cylinder head is just test the ignition system, and the way we can test that is to put the new plug, so, we'll assume this is a good plug because it's brand new, put it on. Before putting it in the engine, you hold the case of the plug onto some metal ground of the engine. The only thing I can really reach, I suppose, is the top of the exhaust. It's fine. And keeping fingers away from the end, I can turn the pull start and just see if a little spark jumps between the tip and the ground of the plug. Okay, I'm not getting much of a spark there. I don't think I'm getting any spark there. Hang on. Turn the engine on. The switch controls the engine by turning on and off the ignition. It actually turns on and off the sort of the ground return of the ignition coil. If that's off, you won't get a spark. So let's try again. Oh yeah, there's a spark now. It's not the brightest spark, like me really. But it is sparking. Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll go with that. I'm going to put the carburetor back on. Find my little gaskets, there they are. I said earlier that there wasn't a gasket on here before. Actually there was, I lied. I've found the remnants of one and I've cleaned it off now. So there was sort of a bit of one left, but not a lot. This air intake manifold, it's actually very clean on the inside. It's pretty dirty on the outside. Could do with a good clean. And again, there's no gasket. It should have a gasket, obviously there isn't one, but there's one in the service kit, so I can put that on, so at least it'll have one this time. Which one is it? This one, I think. Yep, that's the one. Okay, I'll put it back together again. I can't really hold the camera and do this at the same time, so I'll show you when it's finished. Well, it's now officially the next day. It's tomorrow. As you can see, I did finish just putting together the air filter assembly. It was a bit too vile weather last night to test it out, but it's a little bit nicer today. So what I'm going to do is just give it a pull start, just see if it does actually run, make sure I've got everything okay. I've just put a little bit of petrol in just to see how it goes. Alright, so let's give it a go. That seems to work. good, pleased with that. It's obviously 110 output there, but it's got 240 as well there, or 230 really. I haven't got anything immediately to hand to test that, but if the 110 works, then that's almost certainly going to work as well. So I'll give that a test in a bit. Last thing I'll do, I think, is just give it a bit of a clean, just get rid of some of the mildew and stuff off the top, and just tidy it up a bit. And yeah, I think it's good to go. Pleased with that. Thanks for watching.